So I've been talking about the different archetypes of womanhood, the maiden, the mother, and the crone. And today I want to talk about the initiation into each one. So if you're new to my channel, welcome. My name is Valerie Matisse. I help teach and guide women through the transitions of birth and becoming. So I believe birth is how we get initiated into each archetype or each life phase, should I say. In my last video, I talked about how the maiden gets born through our mothers and how we inherit her nervous system. But we also, for that first part of life, which extends out to however long we choose to be into the maiden's archetype, which I think personally we're supposed to phase into our mother archetype around our Saturn's return. But I also think because of all of the ways we can abandon ourselves, abandon our bodies, and disassociate, sometimes our timing in that gets derailed. But I do believe for that first half of life, or I don't want to say half, but that first portion of life, we are still moving through life through the lens of our mother. We are still operating in the conditions, the limitations of her nervous system. And so in order to move from the maiden to the mother, which I also like to call the maiden being in our daughterhood, until we are able to get initiated through birth into motherhood, we are still going to be in that energy. The reason why I like to associate the initiation with birth, because we have very similar symptoms, and is because we are taking on a new consciousness. We are taking on a new life, very similar to being pregnant, taking on literally a new life, having to share your vessel with someone else, having to share your nervous system with someone else, and then birthing them into this 3D reality, this world, this earthly plane, and having to nurture them as they continue to grow until they are able to do that for themselves. And so the same thing happens when we move into our mother archetype. It's just we are either now nurturing and mothering ourselves, as in we become our child, or we have a purpose, a calling, or we literally have a child, which I also believe that is still a part of like purpose and calling when you have children. I just don't believe that your children should be your only purpose. I think they are very influential in your purpose, as in they are going to trigger or activate you into the growth you need in order to fully step into whatever calling or purpose you originally had. And so in that way, children do serve as a purposeful addition to your life, but I don't believe that they are the reason you came here. They are the reason why you incarnated. I do not believe that. But when it comes to having to become a mother, we become a mother as soon as we start to really download and integrate our soul's consciousness. And therefore, we have to separate from our mothers, because through having to operate through her nervous system, we are also carrying a lot of her own soul memory and fragmentation. And so in order to create some separation, some distance, we have to become impregnated and with our own soul's wisdom and remembrance, and then integrate it as in through birth. Think about your first trimester, if you've ever been pregnant, is when you have morning sickness, is when your body is literally releasing and getting rid of whatever does not align with this baby, aka new consciousness. So if you are a woman transitioning into the mother archetype, think about all the ways that life is now showing you, hey, this no longer aligns. This part of our life is coming to an end. It's because literally whatever identity you had in the maiden has died, but I think we are still grieving. So in that first trimester, you are shedding, you are grieving, your body is going through the natural adaptations to take on this new consciousness, this new life. And so we go through the motions that first trimester. You then transition into the second trimester when life starts to feel a little more settled. Your body has now adapted and acclimated to this new consciousness, but you're still integrating it. You're still having to work its way in. It's growing inside of you. Then we get to the third trimester where we are literally having to prepare for this baby. We are preparing for this new life. So I think of like the second trimester is like when you're kind of in that healing phase where it has mellowed out, that like it's not all bad, it's not all good. I like to say it's like blah, that like you're kind of in the in between. And then when you get to the third trimester is when you get like that extra oomph because you're having to like nest and you're preparing. And that I think is when you are really, really like cutting people out out of your life. Like that first trimester, it happens, but I feel like third trimester, you are doing like a deep clean. You are really trying to do your best as far as creating the environment for this new life, consciousness, or baby. Then you go through birth. When our water breaks, I also associate that to, there's usually a tower moment. There's usually some emotional break that really catapults you into this next phase of motherhood, or going from the maiden to the mother. Like there is some form of like breakthrough where it is some emotional unraveling. And I believe this is when our nervous system is flushing out the emotions that we've suppressed. And so these are the emotions that we have suppressed from childhood. These are emotions that were suppressed even from our mother, because again, we have inherited her nervous system. So then all the emotions that maybe she has a difficult time processing, that she disassociates from, and we have learned how to cope and regulate our emotions through our mother, we're now having to face that, which also I believe this is why a lot of women have such a difficult time in birth, is because our cervix is opening, our hips are stretching, which is also the place where we store our emotions. And so you're having to deal with that all at once, which personally, the first and second trimester is when I think we can really focus on our emotional regulation tools. This is where like hypnobirthing and meditation, in terms of like actually birthing a baby comes in. Like you should be doing those things first and second trimester. Then come third trimester, your body has now adapted to these ways of healing to where it will kick in and while you're in birth. That I don't think you should wait till the end to start learning these things. Like you should actually start doing those things as soon as you find out that you're pregnant. But if we're not talking about a literal child, this is all the tools you learn while you're healing: the meditation, the journaling, the EFT tapping, the somatic release therapies, all the things and tools that we learn of like, this is how we can process this emotion, is going to be needed when you have that emotional break, when your water breaks. And then that's when the contractions come. That's when life starts to really life, where we feel like our life is in shambles and we're sliding down the wall, we're having a hard time, is because we are literally having to birth a new life. And so the old one has to completely fall. And this is the difference between when we become pregnant. Like I said, there is some dying that has happened, but we can still kind of be in denial. We're still not fully conscious that an old part of us has died. And I see this a lot when I talk to women, and realizing that like they don't even identify what they're going through in life as a transition yet. They know that they're unhappy. They know that they're not fulfilled. They know that something has to change. They don't know exactly what. They don't know exactly what they want just yet. There still is this in between of, I know I'm not who I was, and I'm not really sure where I am at right now, and I also don't know where I'm going. I think that is what happens in that first and second trimester. But when you get to like third trimester and then actually going into labor is when like shit gets real. Like you have to like snap into reality, and even if you don't want to, even if you've been disassociated, life circumstances are going to snap you back into reality. And so that's really when we are going through the fields and having to really be present, because I do believe during this time life's in a way that you can't disassociate from. Now, unless you use like substances or like you completely just go off the rails. But the point of life being difficult during this period is so that you can be present enough to process the emotions that have been on backlog. Again, your cervix is opening, you are in active labor. The contractions are so that you can be present enough to process these emotions, because again, these are emotions that have been stored within your womb and your nervous system for however long you have been here on earth, and sometimes even longer. You're processing ancestral emotions. You're taking on the energetic debris of the women before you and what has been stored in their womb and in their nervous system, which is why I say legacy is built and passed down through a woman's nervous system, not through men, in my opinion, because all the children that are going to be born from the mother, and especially with girls, because girls also and have all the eggs that they're ever going to have when they're born, which means my grandmother also had me in her body the same time she carried my mom. Like my mom's eggs was carrying me. So there's 3 generations that are being fully embodied when a woman is pregnant. And so you got to think that energetic debris that is coming up while you are giving birth, you have to be able to process. Now, again, all throughout pregnancy, your body is preparing for this, though. So it's not just growing the baby, it's not just your body shifting. Your nervous system is also preparing for this upheaval, which is also why we have to do the things to prepare, the woosah, the breathing techniques, the mental preparation, preparing the home. We do all of this in preparation for these things to come up. Even in pregnancy, your dreams change. I feel like every time I've been pregnant, like I have had very vivid dreams. But I also believe it's because of my relationship with my subconscious. I'm just a heavy dreamer, and then I do believe that's how I process a lot of my emotions. I do believe everybody processes their emotions while they're asleep, or like whatever has been happening in their life they're processing in their sleep, but I feel like that picks up when you're pregnant. But the same goes for when you are going through a life transition. This is also the time where you are dreaming heavy, when there's a lot going on in your life to where you are emotionally processing during the day and at night while you're asleep. Then, you go through the birth. Now you're in active labor. You give birth to the baby. The baby comes, and now you are in postpartum. This is the part where we've had the tower moment. Our life has been shaken up. We are discombobulated. We don't fully know what's going on. We're not fully coherent just yet, because we too are new. We have now digested and embodied and integrated this new consciousness that we too are in a new state of awareness. And so we are trying to adapt while also nurturing this new baby, which again, it goes across the board that like, if you have given birth to the most authentic version of yourself, you are having to nurture and get to know who you are now, because you are not who you've been, and you're going to have to reintroduce yourself to all the people around you if they are even still present, because in that pregnancy or that time period where you are shedding and letting go and grieving, there is also a lot of loss of relationships in that process. So then when you get on the other side where you have given birth to your new self, you are also having to take care of yourself and relearn who you are. And in that, you are also having to adapt to this new version of you. The same goes for with a calling, a purpose, a business. Even you give birth, you launch, you put yourself out there. You now have to nurture this business, this calling. You now have to raise it up. You have to treat it very much so like a child. It requires devotion the same way a child would. And I think we go through postpartum depression even with ourselves and our purpose and our calling. It's just we don't acknowledge it as so. When you make a timeline shift or a quantum leap, because this is ultimately what it is that you are quantum leaping into a new state of being. You are a completely different person. I personally believe if you ever want to have a transformation, have a baby. It's going to transform you within that 40 weeks. You are not going to be the same. You will never be the same. And I do believe this is why mothers have such a hard time adjusting, is because the expectation is to go back to what life was and who you were before. You will never be the same. You are a completely different person. And in that postpartum period, if you have not done the grieving while you were pregnant, that is a large part of what is coming up for women in postpartum, is grief and not realizing that a part of them has died, and they may have loved the previous version of them and do not want to welcome this new version. So as a doula, I like to tell moms, because this is a period of like pure alchemy, who do you want to be? Because you're not just birthing a baby, you are also giving birth to a new you. And so because you are in this in between, you get to exist in the ethers for this 9 months. You get to pull from the spiritual realm all the characteristics, all the habits, all the ideas and beliefs and dreams into this reality now. The same goes in our initiation period, that we are in a void-like state to where we are very heavily in our subconscious, to where we can call forth different versions of ourselves, and then this way we get to take them with us, that we get to reclaim the lost parts of us. So even going back to the maiden loses her initial soul essence that she was born with, her original soul essence, because she has to take on some of the mothers. So when you're in this void like state, you get to go back and reclaim those pieces and take them with you. Like, I wrote a Substack a couple of months ago called "The Innocence is the Map," I think, or your innocence was always the map, something like that. And I talked about how you need your innocence, you need your inner child if you are going to have a joyful life, if you're going to have a purposeful life. Honestly, I don't think you can fully step into your purpose and your calling if you have not reclaimed your inner child, because they are the ones who are going to light up a room. They're the ones with the big plans and the dreaminess and the imagination. They are the ones with the creativity. You're not going to be able to create this purposeful, beautiful life without that version of you, because that's the version of you that still believes in magic. It still believes in the wonders of the universe, versus in our adult, responsible, mature lives, we don't believe that anymore, because we have experienced enough hardship, honestly, to feel like make-believe isn't true anymore. And so as we mature, as we get older, yes, I think we need to mature out of our naivete, but we still need our innocence, because our innocence is what leads us to our curiosity, is what makes us ask new questions. Which in my last video I talked about how the questioning begins to change when you take on the archetype of the mother. The maiden is looking to ask, who am I? Versus the mother is, who am I, or what am I here to create? And so it's no longer just about trying to understand myself. It's now, what am I here to create? What am I here to embody and experience? And that is very much so in touch with our inner child, because our inner child naturally wants to be in creator mode. And so when we are pregnant, whether it's again with the consciousness of a new self, a purpose or a calling, or an actual child, we are in that in between. We have more access to the ether and spiritual realm, to where we can tap deeper into our imagination and our subconscious. And so even when I'm working with women with regressions, we're regressing to child like memories and experiences to go back and retrieve them. So it's a form of soul retrieval in a way. And even when I used to do past life regressions, a lot of the time, especially with women, their mother would come up. Sometimes it would show them different aspects about their mother. And I personally enjoy that because it allows for I think the child or the daughter to detach from their mother, because they'll see their mother just from the lens of a woman, and not this attachment or entitlement for who they feel like they need their mother to be. Because often we can't grow into our own mother of like reparenting ourselves, because we're still trying to hold our mothers responsible for doing that work and showing up for us in all the ways we feel like we were shorted. But when you get to see a glimpse of their mother, it's like it often offers some softness and offers some grace, and just realizing they're just a girl. They're just a woman in this world that came here with their own experiences, who also inherited their mother's nervous system, who perhaps never got to fully move into their mother archetype and may still be struggling with that. Like, personally, I think the mother wound keeps us from really reclaiming our true self, our authentic self, and really giving birth to ourselves in that way, because it'll keep us in a state of daughterhood, because we are still in that longing, we are still wanting parenting in a way. But it really requires you to start to become your own parent and really raise and mature your inner child, because the inner child, like I said, is your creativity, is your innocence. But because you are becoming your own parent, is also having to match that innocence with the maturity of age and wisdom. And this is why the mother is of dual consciousness. She carries both the crone and the maiden. So she has to be a bridge in that way, that she can't live on one side or the other. She has to kind of be in the in-between, because in order for us to be creators, we have to be able to have access to the ethers, but we also have to be grounded into our reality in order to birth that through. And so we could see that very clearly with pregnancy, and birth, that pregnancy, of course, you are the portal for this new life to come through, and in that way you are the bridge. But when it comes down to birth, you have to be in your body in order to give birth. Now, I do think a lot of women disassociate when they have birth, which is why I think it leads to like a lot of women not dilating, even having to get C-sections or having complications, is because the pain and the emotions that have been on backlog is too much for the body to process all at once. So there's just too much to have to process that your body can't handle that, and it does cause one to disassociate. It does put too much stress on the body, which is also why I say you should be probably getting to that work as soon as possible, as soon as you find out that you are pregnant, especially if you know you have had a traumatic life. That if you've had a hard or traumatic childhood, if you know your mother has also had difficult births, or there's some fracture within the mother-daughter relationship, you will have to process that in birth. And so to be able to work on your tools of regulation ahead of time, so that when you do go into labor, your body kicks in. Because I always like to say the body does not just keep the score on trauma, it also keeps the score on healing. And so when you practice and you have a practice of devotion, when you go into labor, your body will naturally know this is what we do to regulate. This is natural for us. We have a routine, we have a practice in place. And like I said, the same goes for when we are in our initiation phase, that we are having to prepare our body and our nervous system for when that tower moment is going to come. Because in order for us to shift into motherhood, the tower moment is going to come. There is going to be a water breaking, a emotional dam breaking, to where there's going to be a flood of emotions that are coming in. Do you have the tools to stay with yourself and not abandon yourself through those difficult emotions? Because more than likely, these are the emotions that you don't have a good relationship with. More than likely, these are the emotions that you cannot sit with and have been avoiding, or else they wouldn't be on backlog. And so the process of your initiation is repairing and building a better relationship with these emotions, so that when the time comes, it's not too overwhelming. So I hope y'all are enjoying this series. I have been enjoying it. I feel like just reframing my mind around being not just a birth doula, but also a rebirth doula for women who are not actually like with child, but are in the transitions of life, especially the transition from maiden to mother, has changed my offerings. I used to do just one-on-one regressions, and now that has kind of shifted, just because I know regression work is difficult and it brings up a lot that more than likely one session is not enough more often than not. And so I have transitioned into my offerings being packages. It's very similar to if I was just a birth doula, that your prenatal package, your prenatal and birth package, and then prenatal, birth, and postpartum, which is like a full spectrum package. But in this way, it's not geared towards birthing a child, it's in regards to birthing yourself. So this is great for anyone going through like a life transition. If you're going through a divorce, you are starting a new business, or really just redeveloping a new relationship with yourself, you're stepping into the role and responsibility of parenting and mothering yourself. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I think I'm gonna make Wednesdays like educational. As y'all know, Wednesdays are ruled by Mercury, which Mercury governs our intellect, our communication, teaching, learning, all things mind, I guess. And so it kind of aligns with how I roll out my devotionals and my practices. And so I'm gonna make Wednesdays for education and then Mondays for meditation.